Thank you, John. Well, it was an expose meant to highlight the problem with sexual assaults on college campuses. A former University of Virginia student telling Rolling Stone magazine that she was gang raped at a fraternity party on campus in her freshman year. But the story was discredited and Rolling Stone retracted it. And now lawyers for the former student, only referred to as Jackie in the story, do not want her to be deposed for a lawsuit against the magazine, saying that that would re-traumatize her. And for more on this, let's bring in Brian Claypool. He's a criminal defense attorney, and Tom Kneff. He is a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Thank you both for joining us.
Hi, having us.
All right, so what's happening here is the Associated Dean of Students of UVA has filed this defamation lawsuit against the magazine, and they want her to be deposed. So what's the chance that that will not happen?
Well, I think it's very slim that she will not be deposed, and here's the reason why. In order for the former associate dean, to prove her case, she's got to prove that the comments made about her were false, and the only way you can get that is from the alleged victim. And the second big point she's got to prove is that Rolling Stones was negligent or reckless in publishing this article. Now, Rolling Stones is going to say, hey, wait a minute, I had to rely on Jackie, the alleged victim, to get this information to publish the article, and we need to hear what she's got to say about the meaning.
Which is what they have said. They agree that she should be deposed.
Exactly. So I find it it's going to be really, really hard for lawyers to Jackie to immunize her from a deposition.
What do you think?
No, absolutely. She's a material witness, and the question is, would a reasonable journalist that covering this story have found her credible, have found her worthy of belief? And I mean, I think there's a lot of things that we know already on the surface that would say no. I mean, this story, was preposterous from the get-go. Yeah. But, what were the conversations that she had with the person who wrote the story? What were her version of events? How could they have been vetted? What witnesses could have been interviewed to determine whether this was something that Rolling Stone should have run with?
So in saying that, should there be certain stipulations put into place as to exactly what they can ask her?
Well, I think there is an important point here we have to discuss, because I've handled a lot of sexual abuse cases. In fact, I was one of the lead lawyers on the Miramonte child sex abuse case. That was the largest case of sex abuse in the history of our country at one school. Yeah. And in that case, I saw a lot of victims who were very traumatized. Some of them were suicidal. So we can't underestimate this argument that Jackie might be so traumatized she can't have her deposition taken. You've got to look at her medical history. In fact, one of the first questions, Heather, I asked at a deposition, or asked of my client, is, are you able to give your testimony today and you're not under any medication that will stop you from giving your best and most accurate testimony? So if she's under some major medication for depression and she can't really give meaningful testimony, that's an issue
they gave
the
her an
judge has to
out.
take
They
up.
gave her an out. They said that, you don't have to be deposed if you say that this didn't happen.
Yeah, see, I lose patience with all these arguments that saying, look, we have to protect victims, we have to, I agree with that when you have legitimate victims. But the reality is we have what I think is approaching an epidemic in this country of false sexual assault claims. We're just seeing them way too often. Defense attorneys like me see them at an alarming rate. And what you consistently hear from prosecutors and lawyers is saying, well, even though the claims are found to be false, we're not going to go after the victim because we don't want to traumatize the victim. We don't want to create a chilling effect for other legitimate victims. And I think that is 110% wrong because, look, rape is a vicious, horrible offense. I think the idea of falsely accusing someone of rape is just as vicious and has just as terrible consequences.
There was also the local sheriff's department there was an investigation, and they found that there was no evidence to corroborate her story as well.
Well, not only that, her story was preposterous. I mean, just real quick, her story wasn't that, look, I had too much to drink, or I was slipped a date rape drug, and I woke up and some individuals were on top of me. She described being locked in a room, being brutally assaulted, including being punched in the face to the point where she was unconscious. I mean, this was a brutal gang rape, and there was no cooperation. Her timeline wasn't cooperated. Her friends who supposedly witnessed this occurring could not corroborate it, and she had no injuries to corroborate it. There was no prompt outcry. So it was ludicrous, and that's why I think Rolling Stone is going to be on the hook here.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think with what Tom's saying, there's some validity to that. And I think the balancing test here would be to have some limits on the deposition. Limit the amount of time for the deposition. Like
And we were saying right now they have, what, 6.5 hours, and they've actually asked for more because that time will have to be split between the defense and the prosecution. So they want 11.
Well, look, I think that's ridiculous because in California, I handle a lot of these cases. There's a limit of 7 hours. Doesn't matter how big your case is. So limit the amount of time. Shouldn't be more than 6.5 hours. And like Tom was saying too, there's some certain points you really shouldn't be asking about. What should be focused on here in the questioning is what did Jackie talk to?
So limit it in
to
scope and time.
Scope and time, exactly.
Brian Claypool and Tom Kniff, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your insight. We'll see what happens.
Thank you.
All right, John?